Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Creating Community Options Through Public Transit. My name is Robyn Bernardy. I'm the Director of Travel Training for MTM. Also joining me is Frank Roth, who is the Director of Eligibility Certification for the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, and Krystian Boreyko, who is the Training and Technical Assistance Specialist for Easter Seals Project Action. Just a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording this session, so it will be available following the webinar. And also, we appreciate questions coming in. We're going to use the chat feature to take those questions. So on the WebEx screen, there's a little chat bubble. You can go there, enter your questions, and send to Ashley Christopher. That's going to be one of the options on the drop-down menu. So we absolutely welcome questions. Use that chat feature and send them to Ashley Christopher. Now I know a lot of people on the call are very familiar with travel training, but there are some folks possibly that aren't quite as familiar, so I just wanted to give a little bit of introduction to travel training so we can all kind of get on the same page. The Association of Travel Instruction defines travel training as the professional activity of teaching individuals how to access their environments and their communities and use public transportation independently. We really see travel training as bridging the gap between the travel skills that a person currently has and the travel skills that they need to access public transportation safely and independently. Now, the skills that they need to be able to access transportation are going to vary for each individual. Some of the things that we work on with individuals are included on this chart. But just think about if you've never ridden the bus before, or if you've never ridden the train before, and sometimes some of these folks have never even walked independently in their community before. So just think about all of the different things that you need to learn before you can do it safely. Some of the things that we work on are how to plan their trip, whether it's how to read the maps and schedules, how to use an online trip planner, or how to call in to a transit authority, how to walk to their stop and their station, including how to cross that busy street, or what's the safest path of travel for them to take. And then also including utilizing accessibility features that they might use along the way. So sometimes folks have never used escalators or elevators. They don't know what those bumpy tiles are, or they've never used a low-floor bus, or a ramp, or a lift, or even a securement system. So all these accessibility features are just some of the skills that we need to teach our folks before they can use public transportation effectively. Now, travel training is actually a family of travel training services based on the skills that a person currently has. We'll define travel training for them. It includes a variety of plans, methods, and strategies ranging from the train-the-trainer approach to one-on-one, more intensive travel training. So the train-the-trainer travel training is used for social workers, for case managers, for teachers. Basically, we want to teach them the information so that they can then teach their clients. We find that lots of times teachers, for example, don't know how to ride the bus themselves. So we need to give them the information so that they can effectively take that to the people that they work with. Through our PRTC travel training program, we provided this train-the-trainer training to over 175 case managers, social workers, teachers, principals, etc. in Prince William County, Virginia. We really work to familiarize them with the PRTC bus system and then give them the tools that they then took to train the people, the folks with disabilities that they work with on a daily basis. The group training is for groups that can help each other, help support each other in the future. Group training works fantastically with groups of older adults or with classrooms that can then work together in the future as well. One main goal for this group training is to make their trip as fun and exciting as possible. We want to make sure that first trip on public transportation is fun and they want to do it again. MTM has the LA Travel Buddy program that is a fantastic example of this group travel training. Lots of the seniors that attend the training haven't ever been on a bus in LA before they go through the training. So we do the training, they have a group ride, and they become a lot more comfortable riding transit, and then they can then go back, ride it again with their friends, and just go to fun places around the community. The one-on-one travel training is the most intensive travel training in the family of travel training services. It's for folks with cognitive disabilities, mental health issues, physical disabilities, people who have little experience traveling in the community independently. It's individualized, one-on-one, very route-specific training, and it's usually not time-limited. So basically, we're with them, training them on the skills until they're able to do it by themselves. Our WMATA travel training program and our travel training program with the Kansas City Area Transit Authority are great examples of this. One quick example of individualized travel training, we travel train this woman named Susan. She's Metro Access eligible here in DC, so she's fully eligible for paratransit services. Before the program started, she went from riding the school bus to school to riding the Metro Access van to and from all of her appointments that she needed. So she never did anything alone. We travel trained her to get to and from a job training program at her school, and then when that was complete, we travel trained her to get to a job that she received in downtown DC. So now she calls us nearly every day, letting us know just how excited she is that she was able to do this by herself, and she's still able to do it, get around where she needs to go by herself. So that leads to the travel training benefits that I just want to touch on. Susan's example is a really good example of how she really increased her independence and confidence through travel training. She's able to go to the grocery store on her way home from work now if she wants. She can have a spontaneous trip, which is fantastic. She was able to get a job. She was able to have more social opportunities, more vocational opportunities, educational opportunities because of her access to public transit. Another benefit that we like to tout is cost savings. Now, Frank and Krystian are going to talk more about the cost savings to the transit agency, but I just wanted to note that there's a lot of cost savings available for the individuals that we work with. Just an example in DC, one-way trip on paratransit can cost the individual up to $7, whereas if they use a SmartDrive card and have a reduced fare card, it's 80 cents. So those cost savings really add up. And also public health benefits. Just one quick fact on public health benefits. The average American walks 6 minutes per day, if you can believe that. The average public transit user walks 19 minutes per day. So this active commuting leads to a lot of public health benefits. Men who commute to work on public transit are almost 45% less likely to be overweight or obese. So there's a lot of positive public health benefits associated with riding public transit. Just one more success story. We have a lot of them. I just like sharing them. One woman that we travel trained here in DC said, I wasn't going to take the bus ever after I started using my wheelchair until I went through this program. All through the winter and cold, she had me stick it out, and now I'm ready to go. I've lived in DC all my life, and if I wasn't shown how easy it was to do, I wouldn't have gotten out again. I was dying to get on that train, and she said, okay, we can do that. And that was the best experience I had. So one question that we often get is, how do you find the appropriate trainees? We do a lot of outreach to schools, nursing homes, senior centers, social service agencies, community agencies like rehab agencies. So all around the community, doing booths and doing presentations to them. But by far, the best referral source that we found is from the transit agency, from their evaluation, ADA evaluation process. Of course, an individual's eligibility cannot be affected by participation in travel training, but travel training is a great way to give those individuals another option to travel around their community. And with that being said, I want to turn it over to one of our transit agency partners, Frank Roth, who's going to talk to us about how his program uses travel training to benefit both individuals and the transit agency. Frank?
Excuse me. Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Frank Roth. I'm Director of Eligibility Certification Outreach for WMATA, which is DC's mass transit system. We do travel training, and we started at around the end of 2003, 2004. We currently have, sorry, a little technical issue. There we go. We have currently 10 travel trainers, 6 that are contracted, MTM, 2 through MTM, 2 through 2 of the SILs, 1 in Virginia and 1 in Maryland. And so they're kind of like our extenders. And then we have 4 full-time WMATA employees or travel trainers. We travel train pretty much any type of person with a disability, be it cognitive, intellectual, could be a mobility disability. One of my full-time staff is also an O&M trainer, so her specialty is working with people with visual disabilities. And then we also partner with Columbia Lighthouse for the Blind. Our main target audience are the people that actually use paratransit. We do offer travel training to people who typically are already on reduced fare or have disabilities, but our main target audience is the people that actually use the paratransit, because part of the travel training initiative for us as far as a transit agency is demand management because of the cost of paratransit. So we try to get those folks that are either conditionally eligible on our transit system, our paratransit system, or fully eligible where they can't actually ride independently at all, and we want to teach them the skills to be able to use the accessible bus and rail system. Some of the travel training benefits, we find that effective hands-on, one-on-one training is the best. We do offer group training, like Robyn said, where there's people can do the buddy system maybe at a school, or they don't need as intensified training. But we find that one-on-one training with a travel trainer and an individual, planning their particular route and giving them the tools and working with them as long as it takes to get them travel trained is the most effective way. We actually meet the people at their homes. We figure out, we talk to them and find out what trip it could be work to home to work and back, or whatever specific trip. We plan the route, and then we go to their home and we take them on that trip. And again, we'll take them as many times as necessary until they're comfortable and familiar with taking that specific trip. The main benefit to the travel agency or the travel transit system is the cost. For instance, with Metro, each one of our transit rides, although it could cost the customer up to $7, cost the transit agency $50. So every time they go, it's $50 because the ADA is an unfunded mandate. So we have to have it, but there's no money to back that up. We have to come out of our own operation budget. We've done some surveys and figured that the average customer takes about 3 paratransit trips a week. So if you add that, we can get them onto bus and rail. That's essentially a $7,800 savings per year per customer that we travel train. So it's really, when you add that up to all your customers, that becomes quite a significant amount of money saved. And we look at that as broken out over a 3-year period, because the typical paratransit eligibility is for 3 years. So if you save $7,800 the first year, and then you add that for the next 2 successive years, that becomes quite a bit of money. And I think we've estimated we call it cost avoidance about $1.2 million. We also, while we're doing the travel training, we offer people accessible options with our jurisdictional partners. Metro covers a wide jurisdiction, like I said, Maryland, D.C., and Northern Virginia. And they also have transit, buses and some limited paratransit, and also human services. So we partner with them to find other options for our customers to use. Some of the success stories for WMATA, just in 2012, with all of our travel training and our internal and external partners, we travel trained about 760 customers. And then through the group training, we've done 1,430, which is a significant amount of folks that have gone from paratransit to using the accessible bus and rail. We've also started a train-to-trainer workshop where we go to schools, residential facilities, where there's groups of people that may live there or work there with disabilities, and we started a workshop to help them to kind of train their people on how to give basic travel training so they can at least start the process. They're kind of like force extenders, if you will, and then get the folks started on the process, and if they need more intense training, they'll send them to us and to Robyn and some of our other partners. As I said, with the cost avoidance savings as travel training, we average about $400,000 a year, which come out to about $1.2 million over the course of a person's straight eligibility. One of the success stories we had was a really interesting case where there was a young man with a cognitive disability, and his mother didn't really want him travel trained, but we kind of convinced her, well, let's just in case something ever happens, let's just get him familiar with how to go to school. So his brother, who does not have a disability, ordered a cab to go to work. The mother took off earlier to go to work, and when the young man had booked his ride for Metro Access, when the cab came up, he thought that was his Metro Access ride, so he took his brother's cab to the train station. Somehow the cabbie, there wasn't a problem with the money. The young man went into the train station, got on the train, and somehow his brother ended up getting another cab and getting to the train station about the same time because of the headway with the trains, and just luckily was on the same trains as his brother. So as the train pulls away, he sees his brother, but he doesn't want to engage his brother. He wants to see how his brother's going to do because he had a little bit more confidence in his brother than his mother did. So they go to where the young man's school is. The young man, through travel training, went to the station manager, says, I'm trying to get to this school. How do I get there? The station manager told him, and he got to school. And at that point, the other son, called the mother and said, you will not believe what happened. So because the mother called us and said, I was so against this, I didn't want him traveling on his own, but had he not had the travel training, it would have been a disaster. She's still not 100% confident, but she signed him up for another class. So that's a pretty major thing in his life and his family's life to know that he has a little bit more independence available to him. I think that's it. Yeah. Oh, I guess sorry. One more thing with excuse me. Like I said, we utilize both contract and in-house travel training, and we have 2 in each of the jurisdictions. And why we've decided to contract is a couple of years ago, about 2 years ago, we got a federal grant to try to do some community-based travel training, and we worked with our SILs. And it was so successful, when the grant was over, we decided to go ahead and fund it. And that's how we ended up partnering with Robyn and them, because it allows us to not only have our internal travel trainers, but have a travel training opportunities in the jurisdiction so the customers can go in within their own jurisdiction to get travel training, and it helps us expedite the travel training. Currently, our funding costs about $600,000 a year to fund our travel training program, and the future funding is pretty much going to be about the same. It might be a slight increase, but it's going to be about the same. One of the questions a lot of people ask is, how do you present travel training to your board, the people that actually write the check? The main thing you need to show them is how it's going to reduce your paratransit costs, because that's how most boards work. It's based on funding. So if you can show them a tie into reducing their transit costs, that's one step to get them on board. You can also show, if you get them in bus and rail in a lot of jurisdictions because of the reduced fare program, you're actually going to put some revenue into the accessible bus and rail system. And then you have to obviously talk about how it's going to be more independent and safer for the customers with disabilities to use the accessible fixed route system. It's going to open more job opportunities for them. It's going to make them more independent and make them a bit more into the community. And then obviously community relations. It's always a good thing to be able to go out as a transit system and say, you have customers with disabilities, and we can help them use all the modes, not just the paratransit, but all of our accessible modes. So I'm going to turn it back over to Robyn now.
Thank you, Frank. So now we're going to turn it over to Krystian Boreyko, and he's going to tell us all about the great resources that Eastern Seals Project Action has around travel training.
Great. Thank you so much, Robyn. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Krystian with Eastern Seals Project Action. And in a moment, I'll let you know a little bit more about what Project Action does in case you're not familiar with us. But for the time being, I just want to kind of go off of what Frank was just talking about with the cost of travel training and kind of what the benefit is to an agency. We have, there was Easter Seal's Project Action staff person that actually conducted a study on this. And the title of the paper was A Travel Training Cost-Benefit Model for People with Disabilities, Public Transportation Agencies, and Communities. And this was presented at the International Conference on Mobility and Transport for Elderly and Disabled Persons back in 2010. And basically what the study did is the people who conducted it had heard a lot of anecdotal evidence that there's a cost benefit to travel training, that having travel training programs saves transit agencies some money, but no one had really done much research behind this. No one had really crunched the numbers. So what they did was they assembled a panel of some individuals in the field, namely people who were administrators from transit agencies, travel trainers, recipients of travel training services, so clients, and then other transportation professionals familiar with travel training services and also paratransit services. And they kind of sat them down and had them pick their brains and broke down all the different costs involved. And they came up with a few different components of what's involved in providing a travel training program. The first of which is the cost of vehicles and the equipment for the training. So with that, we're thinking about things like what it costs for the travel trainer to get on the vehicle, if they're driving to a client's house to start the trip, what kind of costs are involved there. Basically, anything that's involved with the travel trainer getting on a vehicle. That's variable A. Then they thought about other costs involved, and a big one is the travel training personnel. So people's salaries or whatever they're being compensated, anything like background checks or drug testing, basically anything associated, with the travel trainer and their compensation, including benefits. And that was sort of a B variable. And then the final cost is supplies and office space. So when travel trainers not out traveling or not out teaching, where they're in an office somewhere, they're writing up their reports. What does it cost to provide that office space? What does it cost to provide supplies like printing and stuff like that? So that's sort of the third cost variable. And then there are a couple benefits. Of the first one is the increased taxes paid by customers. So when an individual is able to take more trips independently, then they may very well do so. They may be getting out more. Frank sort of mentioned the average of 3 paratransit trips a week. Well, maybe someone who is witnessing some savings from paying for a lower fare is able to get out more often, possibly making multiple stops on one trip, that kind of thing. So supporting more local businesses, basically generating more tax revenue. They actually found that there was this was sort of a significant increase over customers who are using paratransit services. And then the fifth variable here is the cost avoidance, and that is just paratransit trips that are not taken. What's the cost avoidance there? And so from there, they sort of set up a couple different equations. First they calculated the benefits. So those are the two final last things I mentioned. They added those together. They added the first 3 variables of cost, and they were able just to very simply from there derive a benefit to cost ratio. And then they looked at a few different transit agencies, three big transit agencies, and they calculated the net benefit for each one. So they pulled together all these different variables that they had come up with, these different components, and thought, okay, well, let's calculate this out. And what they found from their sampling size of 3 agencies is that, as you can see on your screen, the first one saw a cost-benefit ratio of about 2, meaning that they were putting in about a little bit less than $200,000. Their travel training program was costing them about $188,000 a year, and then they were calculating the benefit out to be almost $390,000 a year. So that's a pretty much 2 for 1. You put in $1, you're getting 2 back kind of thing, which is great. The second agency saw some savings, not quite as good, but they were putting in about $760,000 a year. Their benefit they were seeing was about $1.1 million. So that's a ratio of about 1.5 there, with a net benefit of roughly $340,000. And then the third agency performed very well. That their travel training program was costing them just around $150,000 a year. And then they were seeing a benefit of $590,000 a year. So that's 4 to 1 right there, which is just fantastic. So their the net benefit they were seeing was enormous at about $440,000. So there other 3 agencies they looked at, there was definitely a benefit to having that travel training program, and that's interesting because it is one of the challenges with starting one is justifying the expense, because there are additional personnel that have to be brought on. There's additional costs such as the fare for the travel trainer. There's some additional insurances you may have to take on, things like that. But this study is just kind of helpful to look at the other side of the coin and say, okay, what's the benefit to making this sort of investment? Also, this study has made it very helpful for agencies to kind of isolate these different variables and then run their own calculations. So that's a helpful resource to any agency that's thinking of starting a program. And then kind of the next piece is, okay, well, I want to start a program. Where do I get the money for it? And that's an interesting challenge, and one that is particularly salient in today's funding environment. And one thing I just wanted to touch on today, there are many different funding sources that one could look at, but one that is very popular amongst many travel training agents or transit agencies is to just look at what are the federal dollars they're already receiving and how can they be used. So as probably a lot of you know on the call, that the funding environment for transit's changed somewhat under MAP 21. So the benefits that used to be available through programs like JARC, or the money that used to be available through programs like JARC or New Freedom, have changed. Although at Project Action, we've also noticed sort of a perception that they've gone away. And it's not that they've gone away, it's that they've been rolled into some formula grants. So for instance, what used to be the urbanized area formula grants, that before there was a JARC program, Job Access Reverse Commute, and what that did was it kind of focused on providing services to low-income individuals so that they could access jobs, which essentially became creating creative solutions for providing rides to employment so that you can ensure low-income individuals, including people with disabilities, could get employment and then continue to access it on a regular basis. So that was a great program. It no longer exists as such. However, it is part of this 5307 program, and that's the urbanized area formula grants. And what you have there is you have the opportunity to take dollars out of that 5307 funding and use it for a program like travel training. So basically, what I'm saying is that JARC hasn't gone away. It's just not a standalone program anymore. It's part of a formula grant. And the other part of that is that for when they're calculating how these funds get distributed, the number of low-income individuals, oftentimes including people with disabilities, that's included as a factor in how much money an area gets. So the idea is that the services you could potentially provide are tied into the size of your client pool, or the size of the pool of potential clients. Same kind of goes for the rural area formula grants. Programs like JARC have been rolled into this 5311 funding. And then finally, what we used to call New Freedom funding, which was the 5317 program, that has been folded into the 5310 program, which is enhanced mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities. And that is absolutely money that can be used to pay for travel training services. In fact, by definition, these dollars are meant to go towards projects that improve access to fixed route service and decrease reliance by individuals with disabilities on complementary paratransit. So really, by its very nature, this funding is meant for a program like travel training. And these dollars can come out of a transit agency's capital funding. And the other part of that is usually when you use funds for, or always when you're using funds for operating expenses, you're requiring a 50% local match. So anything that costs to actually run the agency, you're getting half those dollars from something like 5307, but then you're looking for the other half of the money locally. But then if you're using something like $5310, so the enhanced mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities money, and you're using that for capital expenses, so that something like a travel training program, that goes through, that's a mobility management expense, which is a capital expense, and then you're only getting a 20% local match. So your federal dollars can actually be stretched really far when you want to do something like travel training. And I'm really just very basically touching on these issues. So I will provide contact information at the end, and always feel free. Project Action is a technical assistance center. We're more than happy to answer questions about these issues. But I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of that a few ways that you can fund a travel training program. And moving along to tell you a little bit more about what we do. East Field's Project Action is an ADA technical assistance center, and we work with both the disability community and public transit providers to increase options for accessible transportation. So really our mission is to promote universal access to transportation for people with disabilities. And we do so through four main activities. The first is training, and we do webinar training, online course training, so distance learning events. We actually only do one in-person training. We used to do more, but we've been trying to kind of take advantage of technology, like webinar technology. But we still believe that our Introduction to Travel Training workshop, which some of you may be familiar with, is extremely valuable to continue doing in person. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that workshop in a second. The other area we work in is technical assistance. So we have an ADA hotline. People call in and ask questions relating to accessible transportation, which we either answer or research the answers to. We provide technical assistance to groups of community stakeholder groups, so coalitions that are seeking to kind of influence their transportation systems to be more accessible. Oftentimes those groups will come up with an initiative to start a travel training program, so we try to help them out with that. We also conduct a lot of outreach, so kind of getting the word out to the disability community about what kind of different options are available for transportation. Also letting the transit community, transit providers know that people with disabilities need to be included in the planning process, that the needs of that community in terms of transportation are very important and need to be recognized. And then finally, we do applied research. So studies similar to the cost-benefit analysis for travel training programs. We kind of try to look for areas of accessible transportation that don't have a lot of data behind them yet, but are clearly very important, and try to look at those issues and come up with some sort of conclusion. So to tell you a little bit more about our Introduction to Travel Training workshop, it is a train-the-trainer model. So basically the curriculum was put together by a lot of different individuals, but the biggest group were very experienced travel trainers, folks who have been doing this for 10, 20 years and just have a lot of knowledge in the industry, and we're willing to share it with others. And basically our target audience there for this workshop are new travel trainers or individuals who are interested in entering the field. And so we've worked with, for instance, people who are just coming to MTM, and they'll attend the workshop. It's a 3-day event where it's 3 pretty intensive days, and we've been doing this since 2008. To date, we've trained about 500 individuals, and what we try to do is we do it 4 times a year, and we try to have good regional representation so that it's easy for people to travel to the training. So, for instance, we'll do one in the Northeast somewhere on the West Coast, somewhere in the Southeast, Southwest, somewhere in the Midwest. Just we're very conscious of where people are, where these services are being conducted, and where the workshops need to be. And we also try to make it pretty accessible to individuals cost-wise. The workshop itself is free of charge, and we also will cover lodging for individuals who are traveling more than an hour to get to the event. So our goal is to make sure that this is something that's available to as many people as possible. And you see this more so now. Some curriculums, train-the-trainer curriculum, is being developed locally. So when an agency hires a new travel trainer, they have their own sort of training curriculum to take them through. But really, there's no national program like this that will teach the basics of travel training. And it seems as though that there will come a point when there is a national certification for travel trainers. But until then, Easter Seals is very proud to be offering this workshop and to kind of giving people who are new to the field an initial introduction into some of the best practices to travel instruction. The workshop's made up of 7 modules. What we do is we first take individuals through the assessment process. So what's involved in looking at a potential travel training client, working with them to determine what their travel needs are, whatever their baseline skills are, and then determining whether or not they are a good fit for travel training. And we believe that's kind of the most crucial piece of starting out as a travel trainer, is not just going out there and getting on the bus right away, but kind of taking some time to get to know what the individual needs first. Then working through trip planning and talking about the kind of best methods people can use to plan their trips, and not just when does the bus come and how much is the fare, but also working with people to identify the best route to get to their bus stop in the first place, or their train stop, whatever the case may be. Working with them on techniques for riding the vehicle and knowing when to get off, and then what to do when they get to the other end and how to get to their final destination. Part of what's involved there is just letting people know that there's once you're independently traveling, you're sort of in charge of your whole trip. There's not someone giving you a ride there and then taking you right to the door. That a lot of the responsibility is on you. So that's part of what we teach in trip planning. Assessing the path of travel is the third module, and that's looking at the built environment and how can individuals safely navigate it. So looking for barriers, both barriers, but also what's there that can be helpful to you. So curb cuts and truncated domes and all these sorts of things that are now increasingly a part of the pedestrian environment that are meant to enhance mobility for people with disabilities, and teaching people how to take a look out for those and take advantage of them. But also, what are the barriers and how can you get around the barriers? We teach a module on task analysis, which is a method of forming a travel instruction plan. It's just one method. It's not the only one, but we find that to be helpful to take a little bit of time to work with travel trainers to establish some ideas on how to form travel instruction plans, because that is a kind of involved area. We also teach street crossing. So Robyn mentioned this earlier in the session, but kind of how do you get across those big busy streets, those six-lane divided highways without any mishaps. And we teach a module on bus riding. We've really had great partnerships with transit agencies all over the country who are excited about travel training, are always willing to donate the services of a bus and an operator for an afternoon while we take individuals onto the vehicle and let them practice in a very hands-on way what it would be like to train someone to get on the bus and pay their fare, and if they need to use the securement, how to do that, and everything that's involved in that. And finally, we round out the course with emergency preparedness and talking about how to train your clients so that if something happens during their trip, something goes wrong, how can they be prepared for that to navigate that sort of situation safely. And then Frank sort of touched on this already, but the benefits to the actual trainer of attending the workshop is the training is conducted by experienced professionals. We always partner with a very experienced travel trainer to teach a portion of the training. we also have the opportunity for hands-on learning during 2 of the modules, as I mentioned. The audience is a great national representation, people coming from all over, so it's great for networking, for getting to know other people in the field. A lot of good professional relationships have developed through this course, and people have found it helpful to kind of keep in touch with other intro to travel training participants as they develop their own travel training skills, and to knowledge share and share their experiences with one another. And it also allows access to the global travel training community, which I will explain a little bit more about at the end. Moving on, Robyn mentioned that we have a lot of resources for travel trainers, and I want to highlight some of those. The first one here is the competencies for practice of travel instruction and travel training. This is a kind of set of core competencies that was put together a number of years ago now by Project Action in collaboration with experienced travel trainers in the field. And what it does is it kind of outlines the fundamental abilities that are needed for being an effective travel trainer. And it's still viewed as a standard in the field. Certainly it's working on updating it because it is a growing profession and a developing profession. But it's still something that we're happy to provide to you, so you can kind of get an idea of what's kind of involved in being a travel trainer. We have an online course on the fundamentals of travel training administration, and what that is it's basically a 6-week curriculum around how to best run a program. So everything that's involved in hiring travel trainers, coming up with budgets, getting some money together for the program, conducting assessments, reporting, all those things. Then we have a profile on Nate Neely. He's a travel training coordinator for the Chicago Public Schools, and this is kind of an Ask the Expert segment where Nate went through and just gave us a lot of helpful insight on travel training for students and just travel training in a big city in general and what's involved in that. So that's something that we like to make available. We have a resource we've had for quite a while now called Buses and Trains for Everyone, and that's helpful tips for teaching travel training to students and basically teaching student-age children what public transit is. If they're mostly been familiar with the yellow school bus or with mom and dad taking them to school, then this is a whole new world to them. So this provides a very kind of helpful curriculum for doing that, one that's very much geared towards school-age children. On the next slide, we have a few more resources I wanted to tell you about. Of course, there's the cost benefit model for travel training. That's the study I outlined at the beginning. We're more than happy to share that with you. Also, we have considerations for selecting and hiring travel trainers, and that's basically a whole compilation of resources of sample job descriptions, kind of good profiles of people who've been great travel trainers, those kinds of things. Is very helpful to program administrators. We have a travel guide called Get Going, and what that is it's a very small little pamphlet that folds out, and it has a lot of areas where an individual can fill in personal information about where they're heading and what their emergency contact information is, anything that someone might need to know about them, like medication and things like that. So if they're on the trip and something goes wrong, they've got a quick resource they could hand to someone like a bus operator who can help them out. We also have a public transportation route to freedom, and that's just a helpful guide, kind of gets people to think about, okay, well, why is transit a good thing? How is this going to help me live more independently? And it kind of outlines the different things that transit opens up access to. And then we have a resource here on travel training for student success. And that's for, basically, it's a guide on what are the benefits to travel training for students once they are out of school. How does that how does travel training, how is that part of a development curriculum and making sure that students are not only getting the skills they need to succeed in a professional field, but by teaching mobility skills, how are you teaching them to live independently and have just very successful lives and careers. And finally, we have the You Can Ride guide, which is a sort of very helpful pictorial guide to taking transit. It has photos in there of a kind of door-to-door transit trip, and it's mostly photos and very little text. And it also includes sections where one can put in photos from their own transit agency, so that you can show your trainees how to, kind of exactly what the buses and the bus stops and things like that look like in your community. And then finally, I just wanted to share a little bit of information about the global travel training community. This is something that Project Action started a few years ago. It's an online community of travel trainers, and at this point, we've got more than 300 people on there. Anyone who's taken the Intro to Travel Training workshop is welcome to join. In addition, we have a number of other experienced and dedicated travel trainers on there. And it's basically a place where members can share knowledge. It's all the different resources we have are available on there. So if someone wants to learn about program administration or instruction methods, they can just hop on there. We'll have that information available. It's a place to communicate with others, so you can post a question, and a lot of people go on there, read through them, respond if they know the answer. So it's a nice online community, and we're very proud to sponsor that. So if either the travel training community or the resources I mentioned, any of those pique your interest, please visit www.projectaction.org. You can access our resources there, and also on the last slide there is some information for contact information for Project Action, including our 1-800 number. And we do encourage people to take advantage of our technical assistance services. Either call us or email us with your travel training related questions, or really anything relating to accessible transportation. And we're very happy to be a resource to you and to help you in your travel training endeavors. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Krystian. Just a reminder, we have a couple minutes to answer a couple questions that came in. I just wanted to remind folks that if you do have a question, use the chat feature on the WebEx screen. It's a little message bubble icon on the right-hand side of your WebEx screen. And send those questions to Ashley Christopher, and she's compiling them as we speak. Krystian, one question did come in for you. Can you tell us when the next Intro to Travel Training course is?
Sure. I actually should have included information on that on the slide. I apologize for not doing so. The next one is actually in Denver, and it's going to be at the end of October. So that's October 29th through the 31st, I believe. And we're taking applications for it until the end of next week. If you go to projectaction.org, you'll see information on it, including information on how to apply on the home screen. You can also email us for more information about that. And then we don't have any scheduled after that, though we are in the middle of planning one for the first quarter of next year.
Thank you, Krystian. Okay, another question that came in. What is the most effective strategy for small agencies in developing travel training? So are there any differences from larger agencies to smaller agencies when you're developing your travel training program?
And I think what you want to look at is what your customer base is using paratransit and your accessibility features. And then I think what you need to really look at is what's the best option for you. Do you want to do it in-house and hire staff to do it? Do you have enough of a customer base to do that, or would you rather try to contract out with someone to provide that sort of on-demand, if you will, or as needed travel training through a contractor? The key, though, is to look at your customer base and who needs it, and kind of see how many folks that you can get that would utilize the travel training.
And just to add to that, it's the same similar techniques and methods that you're using. You're still trying to get people where they need to go using the bus. You do want to look at headways in smaller communities. Typically, they're a lot longer than in larger communities, so just be aware of the timing issues for the folks that you're working with. And then also, like Frank said, some accessibility issues, especially path of travel issues. There might not be as many sidewalks or curb cuts in smaller communities. So just keep those things in mind as you're developing the program. Another question, besides travel training, what are some incentives that travel agencies use to get ADA paratransit eligible individuals to use fixed routes?
And one of the things that we use is a combination of free ride program for our conditionally eligible customers, which gives them free bus and rail transit, which is kind of an incentive when, as Robyn said, that paratransit can be very expensive for them. So if you kind of give them that extra bit of financial incentive to use bus and rail. Also, we market how independent it is. You know, with paratransit, you have to reserve the ride. You have to be within a half-hour window. You have, you know, both on both ends of the spectrum. So when it's more independent, you can go as you want to go. That's really an incentive. For instance, if you're going to dinner and you want to stay and have an extra drink or two, but you can't because you know the paratransit vehicle is coming up. So it's all about that independence as well.
Krystian, we have a question for you. They asked, is the Easter Seals Project Action Program available only to large agencies?
I'm sorry, Robyn, could you ask that one more time?
Sure. Is the Project Action Program available only to large agencies?
The travel training workshop is available to anyone, basically. It's not agency specific. We sort of advertise a few months in advance where we're going to be holding it and what dates, and we get the word out through our newsletter, put it up on our homepage, we share it with our partners so they can sort of let their folks know about it. And it's not meant to be agency specific. In fact, we strive to have people there who hopefully not more than one or two from a single agency. So usually it's a pretty good wide regional representation, and then a wide representation from both you know, centers from independent living, transit agencies, companies like MTM, anyone basically who's providing travel training services, including school-based organizations. So if a public school system has travel trainers, then you know, oftentimes they'll come to the training as well.
Thanks, Krystian. So we got a couple marketing questions in, and I'm just going to group them all together to save a little bit of time. So the questions revolve around outreach for Train the Trainer, outreach opportunities just for travel training in general. So what are the best ways to market these travel training programs?
And one of the things we find is that you research your community. Your customers are probably your biggest target to do that, because as you train someone, it's a word-of-mouth thing. They'll tell somebody, hey, I got travel training, you can do it too. We find a lot that way. We also work with our department. Our travel training is put in with our eligibility department. So as we're interviewing and we're assessing patients for paratransit, we work very closely with the residential facilities and the senior homes. So that's where we set up and get them and contact them directly and say, hey, do you know we have these opportunities? And we'll send someone out there to do the outreach. Again, word of mouth. We also market, and we look at where our vehicles go. If we have a vehicle that goes a lot to, say, a big senior facility, we know there's a lot of customers out there that we're gonna set up outreach out there to reach out to those folks and tell them about our program. Train the Trainer. Same with and market the Train the Trainer. Same thing. We go out there. My travel trainers are very involved in the community because they work in that community. So when they go to these places, we tell them about the Train the Trainer. A lot of times they'll say, hey, we would like to do this if we only knew how to do it. And we'll say, hey, we got this course. We either can refer them to the Easter Seals program or through our program we offer it. We get them signed up and you know, market to them and get them to come out so that they can at least get the ball rolling. A lot of them want to do it. They want to take care of their own folks. They just need to have at least the basic skills on how to do that.
Mm-hmm. And with all of our travel training programs at MTM, it's just a lot of groundwork involved in marketing the program, getting the word out there. So a lot of calling, a lot of emailing, a lot of just going to the programs and showing up and saying, here's our programs, this is what we do, this is how we think we can help the folks that you work with. So it's just a lot of boots on the ground groundwork. Okay, we have time for one more question. The question is, individuals in our community feel as though riding the bus, even though it does give them independence, is bad because they're so used to the door-to-door service of the paratransit service. So, Frank, how do you overcome that perception?
Well, the two big perceptions is, one, we go to the cost. You know, door-to-door is good, but it's a lot more expensive, and everybody wants a little extra money in their pocket. The other thing is we really push the independence, that you don't have to make that reservation, that you can basically go where you want to go, when you want to go. You don't have to worry about, oh, I need to go. You know, you might, like Rob said, you might want to go to the grocery store to get a gallon of milk. You can get on the bus and do that immediately. If you want to do paratransit, like with ours, you have to book the night before. So if you just get up in the morning, you're out of milk, you may not be able to get milk till tomorrow. So we kind of push the main is independence and cost savings.
Fantastic. Well, that was a lot of information for you folks. In case you missed anything or you want to go back and review what we said, I want to remind everyone that the webinar is available on our website, and a copy of the PowerPoint will actually also be available on our website. It's www.mtm-inc.net. I want to thank Frank Roth and Krystian Boreyko for their willingness to share your experience and knowledge with us all today. Really appreciate that. And if anyone has any questions at all about travel training or anything that you learned today, feel free to email me. I'd love to talk with you further. My email is rbernardy@mtm-inc.net. That's RBERNARDY@mtm-inc.net. Thank you and have a great day.